My family, who are currently unemployed, showed up yelling at my door, demanding money. My brother forced his way in, ransacked my apartment, and I had to call the police. Now, they are in jail. I'm a 25-year-old woman living with my parents. I have two siblings, Frank and Bella. As the oldest, I was the first to begin working. For a long time, only my father and I were bringing in income to support our household. My mother was frequently ill or simply too exhausted to work. Over time, I've come to realize her condition is self-imposed. She prefers to spend her days lounging on the couch, watching TV, and overeating, rather than contributing. I gave up trying to persuade her to work ages ago. My brother and sister found jobs shortly after finishing school, but unfortunately, they weren't able to hold on to their employment for long. My brother was a robber, and my sister attributed her joblessness to her mental health issues. The brief period of financial stability we experienced when they started working didn't last. I eventually had to take on extra shifts, knowing I couldn't depend on them. I worked diligently to advance in my company, and now I earn more than most people my age. Many admire my achievements, yet I often feel like an imposter. Looking back, I realize I haven't done much for myself. 70% of my earnings go towards housing expenses, leaving me with just 30%, a sum that barely covers my basic necessities. On top of that, there's usually an unexpected bill at the end of the month that I'm forced to pay. I work so hard that I rarely get home, and when I do, it's a nightmare. At least I'm compensated for my job, but no one pays me to manage the household. I'm responsible for cleaning, laundry, washing dishes, and ensuring we have enough groceries. My mother and sister contribute almost nothing. My mother spends all day watching television, while my sister isolates herself in her room, only emerging to socialize with friends or find trouble. I can't ask my father or brother for help because they adhere to traditional gender roles. This is the kind of family environment I grew up in. Despite my disagreement with those values, I felt I had no alternative while living under their roof. Every time I attempted to voice my opinion, my mother would tell me to find my own place. She knows I can't afford my own home while simultaneously supporting the family. She also believes my heart is too soft to let her children be independent. None of this is why I'm sharing my story. It's not even the main source of my frustration. My unhappiness stems from the fact that my parents have once again demonstrated they value my brothers over me. My birthday was 2 days ago. My gift? Body wash. Yes, body wash. You might think I'm ungrateful, but Bella had her birthday last month. She hosted an extravagant surprise party that was beyond our means. I had to take on extra consulting work to help cover the costs. This was after my father initially claimed he had enough money for the party, which I had actually declined. After the party, he approached me with a sob story about misjudging the expenses. He also mentioned he had borrowed from dangerous people and was afraid they would harm us. To protect my family, I decided to pay for the party. I was quite upset because they continuously pull stunts like this. Whether it's a holiday or a birthday, they always favor my brother's gifts over mine. This year, my brother received a new gaming system as a gift, while my sister got a gift certificate to the city's most luxurious spa. And me? I received body wash. After everything I've done for this family, is body wash all I deserve? I'm not sure why, but this time, I felt truly insulted. Every previous time this happened, I found a way to move past it. I convinced myself they didn't mean it, that they loved and valued me. However, I believe it's time to stop telling myself lies. That body wash was the final straw. I erupted after receiving it. I was unable to control myself. I felt a huge lump in my throat, and my rage overwhelmed me. I asked them why I couldn't celebrate like Bella and Frank. All I got was body wash, not even a decent cake. My father became angry and demanded why I was being so disrespectful when I was aware of their financial situation. At that point, I started giggling, wondering how he could say that with a straight face. He was the one who went into debt to ensure Bella had a grand birthday, but he couldn't spare more than $20 for me. I grew tired of being treated differently. At that moment, I had to ask if I was adopted. Was this why they treated me like an outsider? I work hard at my job, come home, and take care of everyone, and all I get is body wash? They must be joking. At this time, my mother burst into tears, claiming she despised my small outbursts. So, it's acceptable for her to have feelings, but expressing mine is insulting to the family. That's precisely how I interpreted her comment. She experiences hundreds of different emotions throughout the day, and we're expected to tolerate them. But if I get angry over something valid, I'm considered dramatic. Fine. I decided to stop arguing and retreated to my room. When they called, I pretended to be asleep. I sat there the entire time, just thinking. I was profoundly unhappy. Even though I keep myself occupied constantly, I couldn't fall asleep. My thoughts revolved around how sad I felt. Most people my age are purchasing their first car, getting married, or buying a house. I see some of them doing just that at work, despite earning less than me. I'm envious. Despite being successful professionally, I am far behind in life. I don't have an identity or a purpose in this world. My sole aim is to serve these ungrateful individuals. Now that I think about it, how did I allow them to exploit me like this? They had been taking advantage of me for so long that I didn't even realize it. My feelings on this have become crystal clear as a result of the birthday gift incident. Now I understand that I don't want things to remain this way forever. Something has to change. I feel like I'm not truly living my life, and I'd like to know what I can do to alter that, to find my own purpose. Update 1. I did it. I moved out 2 months after my original post. I can't believe I relocated just 2 months after the birthday incident. My apartment is small and sparsely decorated, but it's mine. Do you want to know what I did immediately after I finished moving? I slept in my bed for hours with no one calling to address a simple issue. It was a strange sensation. I had no idea lying in bed could be so therapeutic. You're probably wondering how I managed to move, especially with my strict family. It wasn't easy, but I accomplished it. First, I followed some advice and started setting boundaries. I paid only the bare minimum for household expenses and saved the rest. I also worked additional shifts at work and saved money. When my parents inquired about the money, I told them it would be included in my year-end bonus. It was challenging, but once I had enough for the deposit, I stood my ground and went into my new apartment. Once I had chosen which apartment to rent, I informed my parents I was leaving. The conversation was far from pleasant. They were outraged and asked if living with them was truly that bad. I told them it wasn't about them, but about me. I was getting older and needed to gain some independence. I wouldn't be able to achieve that if I continued to live with them. Besides, Mom had always suggested that I should get my own place. Of course, my mother was offended by my response and called it snarky. She pretended to want only the best for me, but I scoffed at everything she said. I understood I couldn't win the argument, so I apologized and moved on. My family was adamantly opposed to my desire to relocate, but there was nothing they could do. I had already signed my lease and was ready to depart. In protest, none of them helped me pack. I had to ask a couple of co-workers for assistance. Janet and Lisa, 2 acquaintances from different divisions at work, were the only ones who knew about my home situation. When I told them I was relocating, they jumped with joy. When I asked for help with the move, they were delighted to assist. We finished transferring everything a few days ago, and now I'm in my almost empty apartment. I don't have much yet, but I am content. I can't wait to begin living independently. Update 2. I've been living in my apartment for over a month now. It has been a challenging month, but I am happier than ever, or was, until a few hours ago. Let me quickly recap. What has transpired over the last month? I've been furnishing my apartment and even hosted a housewarming party. Also, now that I have my evenings free, I've started going out with friends and meeting new people through them. It's fantastic to have a social life after being without one for so long. Honestly, I believe I am now living for myself. Aside from building a social life, I've been dating someone Lisa introduced me to. In the past, I never went out with anyone because I didn't have time. My family was constantly disrupting my plans with some emergency. But now that I live farther away, they can't do that. You're probably wondering about my relationship with my family over the past month. Actually, none of them had contacted me at all during this time. They have been unusually quiet, which has been perplexing at times. I considered messaging them, but then I stopped myself. I feel like I'm generally the one who breaks the ice and apologizes when we argue. I don't want to be that way anymore. I wanted to be treated with the same respect as any other member of the family. Therefore, I chose not to contact them. For a while, I thought our relationship was over. That is, until my mother called me this afternoon while I was working. I was surprised to see her name on the screen, but I did answer. As soon as I picked up, she inquired, "Where's the check?" At first, I was bewildered, as I had no idea what check she was referring to. Had she forgotten that I didn't live with them anymore? What exactly were her expectations? She questioned how I expected them to manage without my financial support. I informed her that she had 2 healthy, capable children who could help with the bills. They had a month to look for work. What did they do throughout that time? She then asked how I could be so unconcerned about my siblings' struggles. So I asked her, how could I have pity for a criminal and a lazy girl? They jeopardized their own job prospects. Couldn't they learn from me and show some perseverance? I informed my mother that I was not going to send anything and that they should make their own arrangements. Then I hung up. She called me several more times, but I didn't answer. Later, my father called and attempted to scold me, but I hung up. I couldn't believe what I'd done. I had never cut someone off mid-sentence before. But to be honest, the previous month has been really peaceful, and reconnecting with them has reminded me of how chaotic my life used to be. I don't think I want to disrupt my peace by bringing them back into my life. I wish they had stayed silent. They should have severed ties with me and left me alone, because I was never truly a member of the family. I now realize that they only wanted me for as long as I could provide for them. I was living an untenable lifestyle because I was always available to help others. But now, that's over. I have reached my limit. It's time for me to focus on myself. I should have done this long ago. They've tried to make me feel awful, but it's not working. I believe it's because I've become immune to it. Update 3. I honestly don't know what's going on with my family. I cannot believe I am related to such unbelievable people. I knew they were willing to go to extreme lengths to get what they want, but this is too much. I will not be patient with them after this. They are about to see a side of me they didn't know existed. It had been 2 days since my relatives started hounding me for money. I have consistently told them that I will not give them anything. They need to figure out their own plan. How can they expect me to help them if they can't even pay their own bills? I already have my own expenditures. It is completely reckless and irrational. I've been ignoring them for the past 24 hours, focusing on buying more furniture for my apartment. It's finally starting to look like a home, and I'm very proud of myself. I can't believe I now own my own belongings. Unfortunately, I can't fully appreciate their achievement because they've been so bothersome. I've ignored them the entire time, which is probably why they decided to come to my house. Yes, they visited my apartment last night while I was hosting a small gathering. Here's what occurred. Yesterday was a Friday night, and several of my friends wanted to go out, but I was too tired. Lisa and Janet agreed, so we scheduled a book and wine night at my apartment. 2 more girls joined us, and we were having a great time until there was a disturbance outside the door. I live in a quiet apartment complex, so this was concerning. We tried to ignore it, but it grew louder and eventually reached my door. When I opened it, my sister, father, and brother were arguing with the building's manager. They demanded to be allowed into my apartment because they were family. I couldn't believe what I saw. I told the manager I knew them, but they weren't welcome. My father appeared hurt, and said he only wanted to talk. I asked him to check the time, which was 10 p.m. I told them that if they wanted to see me, they could have called ahead. Also, how did they find out where I lived? That's when my sister interjected, claiming she heard from a friend who saw me at the complex. Then she looked around and realized I was living well. She asked why she couldn't live with me. I looked at her as if she were insane. Why would I want to live with someone so unproductive? I'd need to feed her and clean up after her. I haven't forgotten the dynamics of the past few years. I told them to leave because they were not welcome, especially at that hour. My father refused, saying they wouldn't leave until I spoke with them. I told him I wasn't interested in talking, especially since I had guests. Then my brother started yelling at the top of his lungs, addressing my friends and calling me a useless sister. He then forced his way into my apartment and started verbally assaulting me. Between him, my sister, and my father, I felt completely overwhelmed. Meanwhile, my friends sat stunned, watching this horrific spectacle. Things only got worse. My father and brother began rummaging through my belongings and turning them upside down. I cried because I saw them treat my possessions so disrespectfully. I implored them to stop, but they did not listen. They said I was to blame and demanded a check. That is, until security arrived. It turned out that Janet had gone to contact security as soon as my father and brother began causing a disturbance. When security arrived, my father and brother refused to go and attempted to resist. That was a major mistake, as the commotion grew so loud that they had to call the police. My father and brother are currently in jail for trespassing in my apartment and disturbing the peace. They will not be released until Monday, and I have already filed charges. I am taking them to court over this. They've gone too far, and I'm not going to let them get away with it. This marks the end. They've gone too far, and I'm not going to let them drag me further into their mess. Update 4. I wanted to post an update sooner because it has been 4 months, but I chose to wait until everything was resolved. Now that the trial has concluded, I can finally tell you everything. I think many of you will be relieved to know that my family received what they deserved, starting with my brother. The judge was harsh on him because he had previously shoplifted and is a repeat offender. He was sentenced to 1 year in prison. Unfortunately, this will remain on his record, making it even more difficult for him to establish a future for himself. But honestly, given how he's been spending his life, he had little chance. I'm hoping that his time in jail will get him on the right track and help him set priorities. I've seen individuals considerably younger than him who have significantly more structured lives. My father had to pay a fine to the court and is currently on probation. If he receives even a traffic ticket, he's in serious trouble. He needs to be extremely cautious for a while. Otherwise, he'll wind up in jail. Both the judge and the city take these transgressions very seriously, which is why they have been met with severe punishments. Now about my mother. Years of overindulgence and inactivity have now caught up with her. She is at high risk of heart disease due to her poor lifestyle. Because of how quickly her health is deteriorating, doctors estimate she has less than 2 years if she does not make radical adjustments. Knowing her, she probably doesn't care because she believes she will live forever. I tried for years to convince her to eat healthier, but she never listened. So I gave up. If her high cholesterol doesn't kill her, my sister most likely will. Speaking of my sister, she's been the talk of the town lately, and not for the right reasons. Since money has been tight and no one is funding her lifestyle anymore, she decided to take matters into her own hands. She somehow became acquainted with the wrong crowd, girls who were rumored to be selling certain items on the street corner. It is both illegal and extremely dangerous. I heard about a week ago that she had been arrested for suspicious activity. I wouldn't be surprised if she ends up in a physically dangerous situation as a result of her chosen path. People have urged me to speak with her, but she chose this life. Honestly, she probably thinks I'm foolish for working an honest job. No insult to anyone in that field, but I've observed what some of these girls go through. There is no happy ending in store for her, only drug abuse, more jail time, and risky situations. My mother has fallen numerous times as a result of the stress Bella has caused, but Bella still lives with our parents. So they are enabling her behavior by letting her stay. Even if she is making money, she is obviously not spending it correctly or meeting her responsibilities. You are obviously wondering how I know all this. I found out from a reputable source. My parents are now getting food stamps, and my father's working hours have been lowered. He spends much of his time at home with my mother and Bella. I can only imagine how hungry everyone must be in that house right now. But it isn't only for them. In addition, they must compensate me for the damage they caused to my apartment. I was able to recover the items they damaged, but they still have to pay according to the judge's ruling. I feel sad for them, but not enough to intervene and assist. It is what it is. They made their judgments, and now they have to deal with the consequences. Update 5. I have an update on several recent occurrences, and the truth is that my family is getting further into the problems that, as I repeatedly say, they created for themselves. They are the ones who attempt to dig themselves out of a hole by digging deeper. I'm not sure if there is a path back for them, but I know it is not my responsibility to get them out of the holes they've dug. And they keep going deeper. To begin with, my father, who was supposed to pay for the damage he and my brother caused in my apartment, did not do so. Many of the comments I received in my previous update predicted this outcome, and they were right. The worst part is that this time, he didn't even try. He made no effort to indicate his readiness to follow the judge's instructions. However, the judge was accurate in warning that any failure would result in his return to prison. A sneeze could send him to jail, which is exactly what happened. It wasn't a literal sneeze, but his failure to pay the mandated restitution landed him back in jail. I found out a few days ago that he is currently serving time there. The absurdity of the situation is that my father was ostensibly the only one working in that house. I don't know how my mother will cope without him now that he's incarcerated. When I last spoke with someone close to the family, they stated there was almost no food in the home. Given my mother's health difficulties, this is really concerning. But to be honest, all I feel is a cold distance from the entire situation. For years, I was the one who kept that house afloat, but they emotionally and financially exploited me. They are now facing the consequences of their own folly. Furthermore, my mother is alone in the house, not only because my father is in jail, but also because my brother and sister are now incarcerated. My brother had already been in jail for a while, as you may recall, but my sister has now joined him. Yes, her illicit business venture ended as predicted. She was arrested. Everyone saw it coming except her. Her condition declined when she started using drugs in addition to selling them, making her even more vulnerable and impaired in judgment. An undercover officer caught her in the act, putting a halt to her attempts to live an unsustainable lifestyle. She's currently awaiting trial, but I doubt she'll get off lightly. The worst part is that she can't afford professional representation, so she's defended by a public defender. I do not mean to be harsh, but I don't see much of a chance for her. As for my mother, I'm not sure what will happen to her life now. She is staying in a house that once housed 5 people, but is now absolutely empty. My father is in prison. My sister is facing a trial, and my brother has already served time. The house is empty, and the saddest part is that she has no one to care for her. For years, she relied entirely on others for financial support and provisions. She can barely leave the house anymore due to her health problems. I'm not sure how she will survive. I know they get food stamps, but that isn't enough to live on. In summary, my family has completely collapsed. All I have left is my tranquility. And while this may sound harsh, I do not regret removing myself. Update 6. I feel terrible about having to deliver bad news, but it's no longer my fault. It's my family's. Despite the fact that everything is happening in slow motion, I can't help but be grateful that I am not directly caught up in this disaster. To begin, I finally recovered the money owed to me. It was not an easy process, and as expected, my father did not have enough money to pay me. The only reason Dad did it was because my mother had to take out a loan to get him out of jail. The fact that my father was in jail for contempt made things significantly more challenging, but she eventually collected the money after much effort. Of course, it was not her idea, but rather my mother's desperate effort to secure my father's release. My father's release from jail is arguably the only positive aspect of this situation. During this time, my mother was staying with a relative while working to resolve my father's legal troubles. She left the house for an extended period, and as one would expect, it was abandoned. Now, the neighborhood we lived in was never ideal, especially for leaving a property alone. Apparently, it has been vandalized and completely looted. The most concerning aspect is that, according to what I've been told, there are people living there now. People who, from what I understand, may have previously been clients of my sister. The fact that people are squatting in the house is simply the beginning of the problem. Still, even if my parents are able to remove them, which I doubt will be easy, I'm not sure what remains of the house. It upsets me to think about the status of the place I once called home, especially given I spent so much time and effort maintaining it while I was still living there. However, at the end of the day, it is no longer my home. It is not in my name, and it is not my obligation to fix it. My parents will have to handle this on their own. My siblings continue to fulfill their sentences. There have been very few updates on that front. What amazes me the most about this is how swiftly things deteriorated after my departure. It's as if my departure was the final nail in the coffin of a situation that was already deteriorating from within. Thank you for reading. If you have not already subscribed, please do so and click the notification bell to stay updated on the latest shocking real-life stories.